everyone, welcome to the Fight Network studios. I am John Ramdeen. I hope you all enjoyed the weekend. In the news today, a former UFC champion has a phenomenal performance in his native Brazil. A former Strikeforce champion makes his UFC debut a successful one, and Winnipeg loses its main event for UFC 161. Those are the day's headlines. Now it's time to get to the news. Former UFC light heavyweight champion Vitor Belfort had a vintage performance on Saturday night when he dispatched former Strikeforce middleweight king Luke Rockhold in an exciting form. The 36-year-old Brazilian dazzled fans in his home country with a spinning heel kick that ended the night of the AKA pupil. The victory marks the 16th first-round stoppage win of the Phenom's career. Brazilian submission machine Ronaldo Jacare Souza looked sensational in his promotional debut as he made short work of game stand-up fighter Chris Camozzi. The former ADCC king garnered his 14th submission victory as he managed to lock in a head and arm choke that rendered the Ultimate Fighter veteran unconscious before the end of the first round. And unfortunate news for fans in Winnipeg, Manitoba, as interim bantamweight champion Barao suffered a foot injury and has been forced to withdraw from his tilt with Eddie Wineland, which was scheduled for UFC 161 on June 15th. No word on which fight will be the new main event. Joining me now, Mr. Robin Black, and Barao out, and I know there's going to be a lot of speculation of who's going to be in that main event spot. We heard Uriah Faber saying, "I'm the guy, put me in there against Eddie Wineland." I don't know if it's going to happen considering the fight is less than a month away. But I say Shogun versus Little Nogueira, one of the greatest fights in the history of Pride Fighting Championship. And if you go back, that fight took place in the same year as the Forrest Griffin-Stephan Bonner fight. And I know a lot of people said that Bonner versus Griffin won, one of the best fights of the year. I disagree. For anybody who hasn't seen that fight, YouTube Shogun versus Nogueira, you see the full spectrum of mixed martial arts. Stand-up, wrestling, ground game. It's going to be exciting. Now inside of the UFC, I know fans are going to love this fight.
Dude, after you set that up, I mean, how can I argue with you? What am I supposed to say? Dan Henderson versus Rashad Evans is a better fight than that? It's not. That's the fight. That's the main event. 5 rounds of those two guys. Great legendary fighters going at it in Winnipeg. And man, Winnipeg is one of the great fight towns in North America, and it's their first UFC. This is going to be killer.
Of course, there's no bias on the part of Robin Black. But Robin, like I said, we're a month away from that fight. Shogun and Nogueira, we're preparing for a 3-round fight. Now 2 extra rounds. What do they need to do to make sure that they're ready to go 5 rounds if the UFC says you're now the main event?
Well, I don't know if the UFC can just say you're the main event. Maybe they have to agree. They had, get a new contract written up to be able to do it. But Shogun has notoriously been somebody who had a tough time later in the fight. Although against Henderson, man, those 25 minutes were a brilliant 25 minutes in his own right. Both these guys are capable of doing it. It's really whether or not they want to do it. It sounds like the UFC usually in these situations kind of sweetens the pot with a couple of bucks. Both these two guys will be down.
The UFC went down in Brazil. UFC on FX8. Vitor Belfort, who was the underdog in this fight, taking on the former Strikeforce champion Luke Rockhold. An amazing finish with a spinning heel kick to the head that dropped Luke Rockhold. And you and I were talking about, I think the most impressive part is that Rockhold didn't go out after the heel kick landed. He went down. Vitor Belfort followed it up with some ground and pound. But both guys, you have to give kudos to Rockhold because he is a gamer. And I know he's going to make an impact in the middleweight division. But Vitor Belfort just seems to be on a different level. Really, at any point, he's ready to fight for a championship. And I know I'm sure a lot of fans will be saying that. Put this guy in there against Anderson Silva in the rematch.
Yeah, and there'll be some fans that are saying do not do that as well. There's been all this controversy about the fact that he uses testosterone replacement therapy. It is legal. It is acceptable, just like using creatine or training at high elevation or whatever you want to do to increase your ability to perform. But it's dicey, and we're finding out that they're not, not every fan, not every person that watches fighting is accepting of it. And because of that, Belfort isn't actually able to get licensed in every commission, Nevada being one of them that will not license him. So you go and you fight Anderson Silva for the title, you win it, now you got a champion who can't fight everywhere. There is some, there's some controversy around this as well.
Well, we know at the post-fight press conference, MMA Junkies John Morgan asked Vitor Belfort about his TRT use, and he wanted somebody to beat up John Morgan because of it. Of course, there is controversy because it's a controversial subject. Is there any way we're going to get away from this, or every time Vitor Belfort's mentioned, are we going to hear TRT use?
Yeah, It's a drag, man. It's a real drag, but it's a fact. We're going to hear this conversation. He's the poster boy for it right now. The fact is, when you look at that beautifully executed spinning heel kick to the jaw, not only is incredible athleticism, incredible technique, but the precision, the speed. This is not something that, you know, any of our camera guys, anybody watching at home, any normal person can do if you just give them a little testosterone. This is a very special athlete, very special performer. But there's no getting around the fact that this is a talking point on the guy, and it's going to be. You know, this is sort of late in his career, and he is performing better than he's ever performed. I mean, maybe testosterone replacement therapy has nothing to do with it, but the fact that he's on it, it's now going to be part of the conversation.
A solid show from UFC on FX8. What were some of the highlights for you? I know for me, there was a great fight between Evan Dunham and Rafael Dos Anjos. A lot of criticism coming from the decision given to Dos Anjos because people said maybe he's in Brazil. The judges gave it to this guy, but it was a very close fight, no matter how you slice it.
Yeah, there is a natural human bias that exists. We can take people that you know, when you speak to them, they believe in every ounce of their being that they are completely unbiased. We're the same way. I met a fan who watches the show a lot this weekend, and he spoke to me about the fact that we seem biased on occasion. We will swear up and down, you know, till the end of the day that we see all fights equally, but, you know, perception is perception. And if you're a judge and you're sitting there and you're watching a fight, one guy's more muscular, or one guy has a better smile, or one guy uses techniques you like, or happens to be from your country, there can be bias.
It's also their placement of where they're sitting in the cage. You know, if they've got their back to one of the judges and some punches land, sometimes it's a very difficult thing. You know, people criticize the judges, but it is a hard job. Don't go anywhere. More Fight News Now Extra is coming your way.